word to wise. Grass only greener when it's fertilized. Gave them truth in these songs, they prefer to lies. Destiny beautiful, adrift in her purple lies. You can't see me, you Stevie. Wondering how I reach more evolutions than Evie and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's your boy Ernie, the Blerd Without Fear. Welcome back to the channel. Alright, so today's video, we're going to be talking about Exceptional X-Men number 9. This is an issue that is less about what Mr. Sinister has been up to because, well, let's be honest, we actually talked about that in the previous video, so if you are not up to speed on what's been going on with the Exceptional X-Men up to this point, you can go check out this video right up here. Should get you caught all the way up. Where we're kind of picking off with here is something to kind of shake things up a little bit, because for the most part, in 9 issues of the Exceptional X-Men, we kind of bounced around with a bunch of different characters. We've bounced around with Kitty Pryde, yeah, and reasonably so, because she is kind of the face of this book. We've really kind of focused on her more than most any other character. We've also spent some time looking into the lives of characters like Bronze and Axo and Melee, the new generation of mutants coming into this team. The character we haven't really spent any significant time with is Emma Frost. Yes, she's been in the book up to this point, but you know, she's been more of a off to the side character, more of a background player. She interjects where the story requires her to, but for the most part, she's been just kind of there in a supportive role, more so than I think we have seen her in quite some time. And in this issue, we're actually seeing what I feel is the setup point for getting a little face time with Emma Frost. And while she's not necessarily hitting any milestones, at least none that people focus on, she does actually hit her 45th milestone, 45th anniversary rather, this year. It kind of makes a lot of sense that Emma Frost is getting a lot of focus. She's getting a solo title here very soon, one that doesn't take place in the present, but more just kind of delves into her past, back when she was a villain. But here, I think we might get a little taste of some of what that book promises to offer, but from this specific story. You see, in this, Emma Frost goes toe-to-toe with Mr. Sinister in what is effectively a telepathic battle. Now, I would forgive people for not knowing that Mr. Sinister has telepathic ability, but he does. It's not something that is naturally occurring with him. Like all of his powers, they're taken from other mutants. These are all things he has genetically gifted himself by basically being a genetic vulture, taking from people with power and giving it to himself. Now, to get into why all this is going on, we saw in the previous issue that Axo had been captured by Mr. Sinister and was being used as an empathy battery, because that's what Axo's power is. He's able to psionically get a vibe out of people. He changes his skin, and this is done passively on his part, but his skin changes like a mood ring to match the moods of other people around him, and people who are near him will just blurt out the things that they're feeling inside because of his presence.
You like it so far?
Mm-hmm. Everybody's been real nice.
Well, that's because you have big jugs. Mama!
This is a power that Emma Frost has even told us that the moment that Axo actually learns how to control this ability, he will be one of the most powerful telepaths on the planet. Now, with that being said, during the fight in all this, there's a moment that comes where Emma Frost asks Axo for a little bit of a psionic boost. In borrowing that power from Axo, she is able to amplify her own already considerable telepathic powers. Before we get fully into today's proceedings, 2 things I want to do real quick is I want to remind you, if you've not done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button and tap that notification bell. That way you don't miss out on any of my future videos. I say this largely because there is a video series I've been doing for the past 2, I would actually dare say 3 months now, called Best Comics This Week that I know a lot of y'all aren't catching because YouTube doesn't promote it the same way it does my X-Men videos. I give in most cases spoiler-free and in some cases spoiler-light reviews for the 5 best comics I read each week, as well as giving you insights on what comics you should be looking for to put in your pull box, as well as indie comics and trades that I have been catching up with or have already read that maybe you might want to check out as well. Anyway, make sure you keep an eye out for Best Comics This Week each and every week, and let's go ahead and get on into the video. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you. In the wake of the Krakoan era, the word Omega level mutant has just been getting thrown around willy frickin' nilly. Like, it's one of those things like, oh no, you get to be an Omega level mutant. You get to be an Omega level mutant. You get to be, you get to be an Omega level mutant. No, it's a thing that's been kind of getting thrown around a lot. And while in some places I'm okay with it, there's other places where it's just being done and there's no work being shown. We saw this with X-Force, how Forge was up-jumped to being an Omega level mutant, and we really didn't see him doing anything that we hadn't really already seen him doing for the past 30-40 years. Charles Xavier, which in the case of Charles Xavier, it actually made more sense for Charles to be an Omega level mutant because honestly, he's done shit that we haven't even seen Jean do, and she's an Omega level telepath, and the rules of an Omega level mutant is that you have to be able to not only not have limits, but you also should be able to do things that other people, mutant or not, can't do. That's why Forge originally wasn't an Omega level mutant. There were characters who had the exact same skill set and power as Forge who could do way more than him. Now, supposedly, that is no longer the case. Well, in the case of this, Emma Frost is not an Omega level mutant by any stretch of the imagination, even though she probably should be considered one. And I think the only reason she isn't is because Jean is an Omega level mutant, so you got to give them at least some kind of daylight. You got to put some kind of daylight between them as far as their power sets go. But we have seen Emma do stuff that Jean has done before, and in some cases things that Jean hasn't done before. Now, in some of those cases, there are things that she needed a little bit of help with, but still, my point is that I feel like Emma has some level of potential that has just not really been touched on, and I don't know if it's going to come out after the wake of this, but one thing that happens that just in terms of why she's using his powers, because while Sinister is not an Omega level mutant either, he is no slouch when it comes to his telepathic combat abilities. So that's why she needs that extra boost from Axo. Now, whether or not this is the result of her using Axo's power, maybe overexerting her own, or if this was something Sinister had in place as a failsafe, that remains to be seen. But in the fallout of the battle with Sinister, she's able to incapacitate him using Axo as an extra booster to her abilities. However, she knocks her own self unconscious, very similar to how Jean used to get knocked unconscious in the old X-Men animated series. Like, she would do any little bit of a thing and just be like, oh!
Continued training is crucial.
Professor, we need you. We've been capped up.
Jean, where are you?
Jean!
It's too heavy. Interlopers! Defilers!
Jean!
And as it turns out, we already noticed based on the preview for the next issue, she is going to be trapped inside the mind of Mr. Sinister. Once again, we don't know whether this was Sinister's plan, if this is something he actually had cooked up and, laid out just in case, something were to happen to him, or if this is as a result of Axo's powers being involved in this. We don't really know yet, but I got a feeling that we're gonna get a deeper look into not just Sinister's mind right now and what he's been up to as of late, but I feel like, we're definitely gonna be getting a lot to do with Emma Frost and maybe find out some things about her that we didn't know before, or maybe revisit some moments with Emma Frost that we haven't seen in a long time, very likely even going back to some of the darker elements of her past that she doesn't want to revisit. That's usually the nature of how these things go. And then, of course, I think what's gonna probably ultimately happen is that Emma will very likely be able to pull herself out of it for the most part by herself, but I feel like this is gonna be the moment that Axo is really gonna start coming into his own with his power to help pull Emma out, because that's what we've been seeing a lot of lately with the Exceptional X-Men. The new characters, Bronze went from not being able to summon her bronze, quotey fingers bronze, because it's not actually bronze skin, it's a metal, it just looks like bronze, so that's why she is called Bronze. But when she summons her metal skin, that's something that she couldn't do on command. She had to learn how to do it, and now she can do it effortlessly, and she has greater control of the tendrils that she's able to create, and also using her own hair as a weapon, having coated it in that same unknown metal substance. We've also seen this issue, Melee has learned how to use her powers better, to the point where normally she was doing it reflexively. She was phasing and turning invisible without really trying to. She had no clue how it was happening, and she had to learn from Kitty how to control that power, and now we see in this issue she has greater mastery over it, because as we've seen in previous issues, both of these characters, Bronze and Melee, they've both been training with Kitty and Emma on their own time. And I get the feeling that Axo, well, he's also been doing the same thing, and Emma has actually been particularly prodding at him over the course of these past 8 issues up to this point. I think that we're gonna see Axo finally step into his own and actually have full control, maybe not full, but mostly full control of his mutant abilities. And I think a lot of people are really going to turn around on what it is he's capable of doing, because I feel like one of the things that was very obvious is when these characters were announced, I'm not going to say no one had a problem with Bronze, but I did notice there were people who didn't really have a problem with her powers per se. I think people were just more angry about her inclusion than it was anything else. And then you had the character Melee, which was, people were like, oh, she's just a carbon copy of Kitty Pryde, just with a little extra sauce on her. And I know people had some issues with that, but I mean, for the most part, I haven't really seen anyone have too much of an issue with her powers. It's more the inclusion of her character. I will say, if there's any one thing, she's a bit extra, but I think that's also on, as I've said before, on purpose, because look at a lot of these characters. They're basically various iterations of Kitty Pryde over the course of her time with the X-Men. Bronze is who Kitty was when she first got to the X-Men. And then as Kitty matured and became a more self-assured character, someone who was less willing to just stand by and let fuck shit be perpetrated in her face, Melee is who she became there. And Axo is probably what I would say the character who is just more indicative of Kitty's time, not just post being a ninja assassin, but maybe even her post Krakoa attitude as well. So all these characters are kind of growing up right before us over these issues. And I know there's gonna be some people that are gonna say, oh, they're not showing their work. They're not showing their work. They're just making them this way. No, you're telling yourself. They've been showing it. You just weren't reading it. That said, I think, Axo is going to level himself up. I think a lot of people who were kind of iffy on his power, oh, he's just a mutant mood ring, what's so special about that? I think a lot of people are going to turn around on that, because there's so much you can do with the emotions of other people. Dare I bring up another comic? And I mean, I got to do a video on this one. I haven't done it yet, but it'll be forthcoming. I'll probably record it after I'm done with this. But the recent Captain Planet comic over at Dynamite is doing the exact same thing with Ma-Ti, a character who a lot of people did not particularly care for back in the original Captain Planet animated series run. He was always a character that, if you were a kid and you used to play, oh, let's play Captain Planet, nobody wanted to be Ma-Ti, nobody was buying heart rings. But if you actually go read the comic that's coming out right now by David Pepose over at Dynamite, there's a lot of people turning around on Ma-Ti, because they just realize how powerful the Ring of Heart actually is. And I think Axo is going to be able to do some very similar stuff. Being able to control minds is pretty powerful. Being able to control hearts, that's another thing altogether. Now, I know some people are gonna be asking me, why am I not putting respect on Bobby Drake, aka the Astonishing Iceman? Why am I not putting respect on Iceman in this issue? He is showcasing himself doing all kinds of crazy things and whatnot and what have you. I would, but I've done that before. I actually talked about Iceman extensively during his Fall of X mini-series, his 5-issue series. So if, for whatever reason, if you are upset that I am not putting respect, genuine respect, on Iceman's name, which I've done quite a bit on this channel, go watch this playlist up here, and you'll suddenly know why I'm not acting surprised by anything Iceman does in this issue. Everything we see Iceman doing in this issue is all stuff that was hinted at, teased, or actually done in that Iceman series or an Iceman series prior. Iceman is an Omega level mutant who was literally killed off at the Hellfire Gala last year and willed himself back into existence. Literally resurrected himself. I don't, like what more respect is there than that? But all that said, yeah, this series is great. I've been thoroughly enjoying it, and I'm gonna say the same thing I say all the time when I talk about these, From the Ashes books. I think, yes, there are some books that are better than others. I do think the core X-Men titles are all great. This being one of them, and then Gail Simone's Uncanny, Jed MacKay's Adjectiveless X-Men. And then, there's also Marewa Ayadeli's Storm series, which I think is actually the best book out of all of them. But at the end of the day, I think that this book is doing what it needs to do. I'm actually glad that Tom Brevoort did not shit-can this book like he did NYX or X Factor or X-Force. I think this book actually does have something to say. I think Eve is very good at writing what I feel is a more personal and kind of pared down X-Men. It's something that's very indicative of the classic years. And she really, as I said earlier, you're just talking about what Melee, Axo, and Bronze represent. I feel like if you still think that she doesn't get Kitty Pryde after me telling you this, I don't know what to tell you. She gets it. She understands Kitty Pryde in ways that I think a lot of people don't. The fact that she was able to distill Kitty Pryde down into 3 specific different characters, different iterations of Kitty Pryde, I think that's just pretty impressive.